Oh, we just started recording. I'll be helping moderate this session and maybe say a few more thoughts after the two other panelists do their presentations. And I thought I'd introduce myself a little bit with some background. I've been interested in transit advocacy since about 2010. And in 2015, my interest became Bus Map Project, which I co-founded with Shadi. And then that, I guess, like 3 years later, became Riders' Rights. So it's been a long journey. But I like to joke that I'm sort of semi-retired now from this whole thing. I just chip in when I can. While I have the mic, people in Seattle should know that I'm also working with Washington Against Nuclear Weapons these days. And we've got a film festival coming up in 2 weeks. So I'm just dropping that link here if anybody's interested in that kind of advocacy. But other than that, I will now hand it over to Shadi to maybe give us first a few thoughts on what this whole session is about, why we're doing it, and then maybe he could launch into his presentation.
Okay, hello all. Thank you, Rad. Thank you, Kathy. So my name is Shadi Faraj. I'm from Lebanon. So I co-found with Jad Zatini and Fadi Saya, also the Rider Rights NGO. So the session was planned, and the idea of the session was from 2 years ago or more, and now it's happening after a long discussion, I think. So the idea is, like Kathy said, about sharing knowledge and experience about ridership advocacy between the two cities, the two countries, the two systems. Especially in Lebanon, we are living in a crisis, so we need to think about other experience, learn other from other opportunities on a lot of levels, especially on mobility aspect at some point. So that's the global idea of this session and the webinar will have it. So it's semi-open, so we'll have two presentation and three presentation. So Jad is the common link between the two organization, let's say. So we'll have a session about TRU and another one about the rider's rights, and a final one with Jad that he will link the two ideas at some point, and we will have an open discussion at the end. Okay, so thank you, and I think we will start with Kathy presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll say a little bit about our transit system here in Seattle and in general transit systems in the United States. I mean, I think like the big difference from Lebanon is that we have kind of publicly run transit systems in most cities in the United States. And here in Seattle, we have a number of transit agencies that kind of overlap. So we have a bus system, King County Metro, which operates throughout the whole of King County, which includes Seattle and a bunch of other adjacent cities. We have a transit agency called Sound Transit, which is a multi-county agency that covers 3 counties, and that operates our light rail system, and it also operates buses that go between the counties. And then we also have a streetcar system in Seattle, which has just a couple of lines at this point, but that is run by the city. So, and then there are, some other county bus systems that also kind of come into King County. So we have these overlapping transit agencies, but all of them are publicly run and to a large extent publicly funded. So this, I think, is another big difference, is that here in the United States, like transit does not pay for itself really anywhere. So every transit system is significantly funded through taxes. And then fares only account for a portion of the funding. And I was actually looking online. There's a Wikipedia page, which here, maybe I can put this in the chat, about fare box recovery ratios. So kind of the how much of a transit agency's oops, that was the wrong thing. How much of a transit agency's funding actually comes from fare revenue. And there are some public transit agencies in the world where the fares actually cover the costs of operation, primarily in Asian countries. So in Japan, in Hong Kong, some other countries have train systems or that where the fares actually cover the costs. In the United States, we have very low fare box recovery. So often fares only cover like 25% or even like 15% or even less of the costs of running the system. And partly that's because we have such a strong car culture and car infrastructure here in the United States. Like public transit is not the way that most people get around, except for in a few kind of exceptional places, like maybe New York City, but even there's a ton of cars. And so that means that because we don't have like transit systems that are as good as some countries like in Europe and in Asia, a smaller portion of the population uses them. It's often people who just can't afford a car or can't drive because of a disability. And so that means that the transit system becomes less efficient, and therefore the fares don't make up as much of the operating costs. So here in Seattle, the transit agencies, like it's probably around 25% for King County Metro, like what fares cover. So that said, still fares can be a barrier to people using the system if you're low income or very, very low income. Even paying $2 or $3 is really expensive. And so one of the things that TRU has done over the years is done a lot of campaigning for free or reduced fares for low income riders. And so I'm going to share my screen and just go through a little slideshow that shows some of the work that we've done. And of course, I think we'll get into a lot of contrasts with the situation in Beirut and Lebanon, but having a public transit system that's run by the government means that there's an easy way to push to make it better in a sense, because you can push on elected officials, you can push on the agency. There's a much clearer kind of route for advocacy than I think you all are having to work with. So let me just share my screen real quick. Okay, hopefully you can all see that. Sorry, the date is wrong. This is a presentation I put together last year. So I'll just run through this real quick. So we were founded in like 2011, 2012 to fight for affordable, accessible, and reliable public transit. And the organization started during a time when our bus system was under threat, where the funding, especially from sales tax revenue that sustains the system, was declining because of the Great Recession a few years earlier in 2008. And one of the things the transit agency did to try to keep afloat was to raise fares a number of times in just a few years. And so we were fighting to save our bus service, and then also we were fighting to save the ride-free area, which was an area in downtown Seattle where you could just get on and off the buses for free, and they were going to eliminate that, and they did eliminate that. And so we had this big protest when they eliminated the ride-free area. It had been in place since the 70s. We gathered lots of petition signatures. We had a march. So we didn't succeed in saving the ride-free area, but the momentum that we built and the understanding of the importance of affordable transit led to a campaign to win a low-income reduced fare. So for people who are under 200% of our federal poverty level here in the US. And so we won this program, Orca Lyft, which basically allows low-income riders to ride for less. So, and now it's $1. The standard fare is like $2.75 or $3, and the low-income fare is $1. Then we partnered with some students at one of the high schools here in Seattle, Rainier Beach High School, and they fought for free fares for students. And so this was a campaign that took a couple years, and we ended up winning. And high school and middle school students then got free transit passes, and that's actually since been expanded into a statewide program. So now across Washington State, youth ride transit for free. Another thing we've worked on over the years is trying to get free transit for homeless and very low income transit riders, working with some of the service providers that provide services. or that, like shelter and for a program where service providers can get discounted ticket for why we need affordable transport. And then, yeah, the last thing I'll say is we've also done a lot of work with labor unions. And so this was a campaign that we worked with. This is a campaign that we worked on for a number of years with unions that represent workers at the University of Washington, basically pressuring the university to provide fully paid for transit passes for all the workers at the university, including, facilities workers, everyone, grad students, postdocs, even up to faculty. And got a little visitor here. Okay. And yeah, and in the course of that, those campaigns, we definitely had to make some noise and really put pressure on the university, including doing some big actions where we stopped traffic and made sure that they had to listen to us. Okay, I'm going to actually stop there. Let's see. And yeah, and I guess pass it along to Chadi. I'm also happy to take questions, or we can leave that till the end. I don't know. What do you think, Jed?
Let's keep the flow going. Shadi, let's hear from you.
Okay, I will share my screen. Where is my presentation?
Do I need to make, are you trying to share slides? Do I need to make someone a co-host for that? Or, oh, you got it, okay.
Okay, so you see it, yes?
Yep.
Great, so I will start. So I will give some insight about Lebanon. So if we have a lot of foreigners at some point, so we have about a population about 6 million. We have about we have about also 1.7 million of private cars in Lebanon, one of the highest ownership per capita at some point, per thousand person. We have also 20% of trips are done by shared transportation. Shared transportation mean buses, mini buses, shared taxi, and taxi at some point. We don't have a lot of enforcement for the law of traffic law at some point. We don't have a power structure for mobility. And I will speak about also something called the red plate. So red plate license is a license that give the people who own it to give the service of public transportation in general. It's a kind of private authorization for people to give this service at some point. That's what we have in Lebanon at some point. I will go to the next. Also, Lebanon has survived the civil wars till 90, from 75 to 90s. We have a kind of semi quasi informal system where the informal system is a majority who's serving people at some point. So what we have also 80% of cars on the street. So after also in 17 October, we have some the revolution that happened and did not succeed to get the political success at some point. And in 2019 also we had the crisis, the economic crisis, the inflation, the dollar rate has risen a lot. So we are in this situation now. Also, we have the fuel increase more than 1,600% of the fuel prices and transportation at some point that in less of 2 years has it happened at some point. Okay, and we don't have any true investment in public transportation in general. Okay, so who we are at general as Riders' Rights. So we started as a bus map project, a grassroots initiative that collects the data of informal transportation on Lebanon and placed and done the first public transportation maps, let's say, by the riders, not a company, not a government. So from people to people, as we like to say about it. And we are based in Beirut and with Jad in Seattle at some point. So in 2019, we get our official, after 3 years of challenges to have it, to register our NGO, we have it in 2019. So our team is multidisciplinary from the riders, drivers, designers, academic expert, activists, and students in general. So so Riders' Rights is trying to build a collaborative network who defends the riders of the rights of riders and driver at some point, and the sector in general, how we could protect the sector and make it more efficient and more accessible for all, especially for people with disability and for all people in general, to achieve the mobility justice in our, that's the vision we are trying to put on the table at some point. So what the aim of Riders' Rights at some point to reshape the culture of mobility in general in Lebanon and the region, at some point, Arab region in general. We are trying to, like I said, protect the informal mobility and make it better and more efficient and more safer and accessible for all. Also trying to encourage people to take the shared transportation and leave their cars home at some point. Empower the community of riders and drivers at some point. Create advocacy for the government to have more power structure organized at some point. Okay, and create an integrated mobility landscape linking all modes of transportation, cycling, walking, and safety on the street at some point. Okay, someone open. Okay, so I will continue. So in general, this is the map I told about you. So we did have two versions, one in 2016 and another in 2018. It was made by volunteer riders who did go and collect all the data at some point, and with the map, we try to protect the system at some point and as improve the system, because there's a lot of stigma about the system and negative ideas about the system. So the map and the technology, we use it to try to change part of the narrative and related to the system at some point. Also, this is a busmap.me platform. Also, it's a digital and more dynamic also platform, so people could use it and use it more after 2019. So a lot of people lost their mean of transportation and start to use public transportation more. So and rely on our data and our platform more and more. So what we are trying to improve, to build a community of riders that will put their effort to enhance the system from bottom-up approach at some point. And on the right, you could see a kind of a ticket from the system. Not all buses has tickets, but some of them have a ticket. I will tell you later about this more. So we are trying to raise the voice of the riders and try to create a new equilibrium in the sector in general. I will go. Okay, so what we are trying to do also awareness about and campaigning about mobility. So the first one is we are doing trips using public transportation to let people to know about the system and use the system, because a lot of people refuse or don't know how is the shape of the bus at some point. Even so, with those trips, we are trying to give them more information and break the stigma and give them the first experience, at least with us. We launched a campaign with TRU partnership at some point in COVID time called Busline Heroes, where we try to make collect some money for the driver, especially in COVID time. And we did also create a first protocol, I think, for informal mobility for COVID time. And we trained a lot of driver on it to protect themselves and protect the rider at later stage. Okay, and also we do workshops with universities and webinars like this and clubhouses at some point, where the clubhouse were a trend at some point. And we've been a lot on shows, TV shows, and I like a lot the revolution on cars in the bottom of the graphic. So also we write about the blog with Jad. He started the blog, and we start to write more and more about the mobility. And one of my favorite one is the Rosa Park. Also experience how they broke the stigma and so the racism at some point in the sector of public transportation between black and white at some point. And we have her bus articles, also series of articles, still having a lot of experience of girls and women in the system at some point. I don't know if I missed something. Okay. So, and we have some campaigns called Save and Ride. I showed you before the ticket. So when you have this ticket, when you are in the bus, you could go and any local shops we agree with, and you will have some discount. This campaign has stopped because of the situation, but we are trying to make it relaunch it soon. Also, we take care about the free transportation days, this is, like international days. So we try to make some free ticket for some riders on that day every year. So we have a community also of riders who help each other how to commute and know how to go with the least cost using public transportation in general. So we have a Facebook group and WhatsApp group that people try to help or support each other. Okay, so we have a lot of partnerships at some point with TRU and a lot of university, and we launched something called Mobility Justice Network, several NGOs that work on mobility, and we are part of public space also network. So because we know the importance of public space for mobility in general. Okay, so we are trying to work from academic to practice and vice versa, also to have some kind of observatory soon will be launched also, how to will collect data and reflect data on policy at some point and academic research at some point also. So also here some activity with mobility justice. The first one, we visit the Minister of Transportation when we got the donation of French buses, because we had a donation from French buses, and we give them our insights about what could happen, because we know a lot about the system more than the Minister of Transportation, because it's informal and they don't think they're the system, and they don't care at some point about it as it's not exist at some point. So why we are trying to do? So, like I said, a community of experts and riders, operators. So, and create a kind of uh, uh, a community of riders at some point. And now we are launching a program called Mobility Justice Youth. So where the youth will empower those youth to demand their rights related to mobility and have more data to put it in the observatory and put policy and campaigns at some point related to mobility in general. Okay, so mobility Ponzi. So what we called in Lebanon happened before 2019, a kind of Ponzi related to mobility in general, because the figures or the number give those insights. So we have about 19 million imports of cars yearly before 2019. We have more than 21 billion of imports between 2020 and 2000. We have a lot of loans that were given to especially youth to bring to boat cars and go by their cars. And the GDP lost about 2 billion yearly before 2019. This picture is taken in the 60s in the tramway. It shows how the cars and the tramway and give insights about, let's say, like the conflict between the car industry and the public transportation. And I think it's common between Lebanon and a lot of cities where the tramway were removed because they need space for cars more and more. Okay, so now with the current situation, I want to talk in general. So we have an informal mobility in Lebanon that are serving people. We have now a new player, the tuk-tuk. We did not have tuk-tuk before 2019. After 2019, we have a lot of tuk-tuks, and especially in rural places. The cost of mobility is very high. A lot of people has lost their jobs because of this, and we had a lot of employee did not go for a long time, for especially government employee did not go for their jobs for 1 year and more because they could not afford to go. So the whole system.
In the sense that transit in North America is only one massive budget cut away from also regressing in quality anywhere. So I would say the kind of resilience, the kind of multiple tactics that groups like Shadi's are doing is something that should be learned over here, because you never know when they'll be needed. You'll never know when you have to go, oh, you lost your main source of advocacy, the city council where you'd go and talk about it, but you now have to go like talk to drivers themselves, build relationships with drivers themselves. This is a sort of dystopic future, but it might not be too far away. So that's the sort of another stake for why North-South solidarities are very important in my view. And because I'm interested in sort of cultural continuities and discontinuities, one of the main things I noticed when I first came here were all the little things where like, oh, that kind of reminds me of Lebanon. I didn't expect that. That kind of reminds me of Lebanon. And it's little tiny things, but I think it's important for us to highlight when we talk about things like statistics and policies. We often turn these things into almost like purely engineering topics, as opposed to them being lived experiences. And little things like, oh, bus drivers will actually wait for you if you're running to catch it. That thought was surprising for me because of the ideology that we were given, that there is a modern system versus a informal system. The idea that you can here on any corner on Union or whatever run and be like, hey, stop, and the driver kind of like waits for you momentarily is a little sign of the conviviality that is present even in the north, that people like us who are in countries like Lebanon and in Beirut, we're told doesn't exist. We're told you have to get rid of that. You were told that that's part of modernization. That that's actually, it's a problem if the system doesn't treat you like you're just a speck. You know what I'm trying to say. So sort of things like that. And then the convivial spaces that you also see inside the buses where people help each other out if you're lost, whatever. Again, these are everyday experiences that we take for granted in cities where the transit is just something you have in the background. And but in Lebanon, we're told that that's just part of our culture. Like in Lebanon, that's a thing that is just, it's just because in Lebanon, but actually you can be an anonymous person, put on your headphones elsewhere, and you can be free to be yourself as an individual. Those are the things I would notice when I first started riding buses here. People actually do help each other out, and people, and that's actually a good thing. And maybe erasing that out of the culture isn't part of progress and isn't part of improving a system. In fact, it's a great way of maintaining, transit rider leverage. The ability to actually organize is, protected by keeping the spaces of conviviality that you see in places like Lebanon. So those are some of the points I wanted to make. I think I'll send it back to you, Shadi, if you want to wrap up your last couple of slides, or what do you think?
Yes, I could wrap my last 2 slides. I think it will converge at your thoughts at some point. Okay, let me share the screen. Some point. So I was trying to talk about the situation here in Lebanon, what we have. So I said we have a lot of tuk-tuks now, especially people. Some people don't like the tuk-tuks because when you have tuk-tuks, also they think tuk-tuks are for poor countries at some point. So, and they refuse to use it ideology and as a prestige at some point. I don't know. It's a common word at some point, but yes. So, and they so we have some people in political parties. They want always to have the private car as the number one, let's say, mode of transportation as a free and choice and free market at some point. And they don't think public transportation is a good mean of transportation, or we should invest at some point in it, or not. So we have also a lot of let's say political parties that think in this path, let's say. So because we had a lot of new demand of transportation, and let's say the government did not try to invest in the public transportation, especially when they remove the fuel subsidies at some point. So people start to find their way for mobility as it was before the crisis at some point. So that's why we have the tuk-tuks now, and that's why we have more than 300,000 of motorcycle on the street now, and a lot of people now are using it because of the cost of transportation. So we have it before the crisis only in poor, let's say, at some point, poor district. Now it's all over the country. You will have a lot of motorcycle. People are using it more and more and more, and we have a lot more of casualties on roads because of the road safety at some point, and let's say we did have a lot of casualties before the crisis, and after the crisis the number has increased a lot. So every day or couple of days, one day we have at least one casualties from the road accident at some point. So we have high cost of transportation and less quality. You could see now students, how are they are going to schools by the tuk-tuks, the electrical tuk-tuks, and by the like a cage in the tuk-tuks. So we have those kind of transportation now. At the same time, I was talking about the donation of buses. So we had a donation of buses from France. That's why they are called French buses. They are the green and white one in the picture. So the government tried to operate them from from more than 1 year, but they did not manage to operate them because of the cost of transportation and the maintenance, and they don't because also the salary of the employee at some point they lost their salary power at some point. So now they are relaunching, they make a tender for private companies to come and operate the buses owned by the government. And now the tender has successfully succeeded after 3 trials at some point, and they are now in the media we are hearing they will be operating soon. The thing what's is good in those buses, they are accessible for people with disability. So I think they will be the first buses accessible for people with disability, and we are trying to push to be operated at some point, but also to respect to have a full planning for bus stops for people for disability could use them in a good way, because if they don't plan for accessible bus stop and streets, people with disability will not use them at some point. So we are trying to campaign for this project at some point, and we are trying to figure out what's happening, because there's a lot of, let's say, information hidden and not shared with the public at some point in general. So and in below we have those kind of buses operating in Lebanon, the Mitsubishi Rosa. So bus, I put this bus so you know what kind of buses we have it, and we have minivans also. So we have a lot of challenges and opportunities, and people now are more aware about the rights of public transportation, and they are demanding more for public transportation at some point, and some people are also demanding for fuel cost and for their cars at some point. So we have those two conversation now happening, hoping we could push for investing more in public transportation. I just want to share the last idea about in general. So there's a transport poverty concept even in UK. So when you have no public transportation arriving to your neighborhood, or you are not accessible for it, you will pay more tax and money. So it's a kind of transport poverty. So we share even in North countries also the issue of transport poverty at some point. It's not only in North countries. So as a least final statement for us, so we see as a community of transportation, let's say it's part of a larger community, and it effect can be political at some point for yeah, so like I said, the society is the community in the community and the public transportation in buses are part of the public space in the country, and what's happening here there will affect what's happening in other spaces related to political issues also. And thank you.
Thank you, Shadi. I think we have a few minutes for questions.
Yes.
Does anybody want to hop on and ask something on cam, or if you'd prefer to put it in the chat?
I will show pause.
Thank you, Amy. That's a clap, but is there a hand up that anybody wants to say? Katie, did you want to say any final thoughts? You were sort of, oh, I see a message come in.
Someone has raised her hand, or someone, Yubi or something.
Yobi? Do you want to say it out loud, or what you just said?
Okay, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so yes, I asked you questions about Lebanon, because Lebanon is a very interesting case of how because I did research. I mean, I watched videos, read Wikipedia. I know Wikipedia is not valuable, but news articles, Wikipedia, information online, and that includes Lebanon, because Lebanon, I did learn about Lebanon was influenced by the Civil War, and then there's a political system that led to corruption and inequality and a political and economic crisis. So the question I did ask, I already asked in the chat. The question that I asked is about, because I did mention about the type agreement, which ended the Lebanese Civil War. How did the transportation system in Lebanon, are they influenced by the political system? And the reason why I asked this was because I watched a video where it mentioned about different services after the Civil War. The political system was created, different services was being controlled by religious groups. So that was the question I asked.
Yes, I'll hop in. Yes, it is definitely the geography of the country is affected by the sectarian system. If you know, I'm not sure how many people here are aware of the system, but obviously the Civil War had fragmented the space itself through different neighborhoods being controlled by different groups, which had sectarian or religious codings. The city itself, and it literally affected transit in the sense that the middle of the city, where you know the transit hub used to be, was split, and two new transit hubs were formed on either side of the divide in what was East Beirut and West Beirut. So these are the current transit hubs that exist till this day. Daura and Kola, these are a direct scars from that division. But even more so, more to what your question is, you know, the political influence. Of course, different neighborhoods have different power brokers, whether they are officially in the city councils or we call them municipalities, or they're just you know, people who control the streets. So that means they have influence over what kind of routes come in and what don't, you know. So there is, that's, I mean, so some of the ideology I was talking about before of like mafioso and whatever, it's not like it's coming out of nowhere. Yeah, there is some element of, you know, turf war. There is some element of you can't just start driving a bus in a neighborhood without talking to the power broker there and having them agree. Exactly, the systems reflect the society. The real problem is the catastrophizing of this situation, as though it's impossible to negotiate. I mean, if you want to affect change in your country, you affect change in your country. You have to deal with the power dynamics that exist in your country, not some imported, imagined dynamic from Europe, you know. So not that there aren't situations like that in Europe. But yeah, I think that, does that answer your question, Yobi?
Yes, yes, thank you for asking that. But yes, I understand, because the video already mentioned by sectarian division between, even though Lebanon is religious group, mostly Christian and Muslim, but they are also division. But the question is, do you think an inclusive transportation system can help reduce the religious divisions, even or an inclusive political system can help reduce the religious division, which includes creation of services, including transportation, that are inclusive, equal, human rights based. So do you think the creation of services that are inclusive can help reduce the religious divide? And yeah.
I mean, I believe so. That's the dream. As sort of a democratic, non-sectarian system would lift up all things, all boats. But also, I would say that in these convivial spaces that we were hinting on, no route goes around in a circle within one demographic space. All routes start one place and end someplace. So a lot of these do traverse divides. They already kind of stitch the city back. And within those spaces, you find that kind of multicultural that you hope for. You find a space where people don't really care about your background. It's more about the power dynamics of who gets to make money off of them. But in the space itself, I mean, I rode a bus all the way from Baalbek to Nabishit to the shrine of a Shiite prophet. And I was the only one there who wasn't Shiite, and it was completely fine, like a complete tourist, and enjoyed myself. You know, so that sort of it's a two-way thing in the sense that yes, policy change would help create a kind of inclusive reality in Lebanon, but the inclusive reality is also sort of underneath the reality when you underneath the surface. If you take the step and actually go from one area to the next, you'll see that most people don't live in the sectarian world that the politicians create.
Okay, but I like the way you frame it, democratic, not totalitarian, because that's what I was going to say. But I agree with the democratic, not totalitarian, inclusive approach to solving the problems.
Yeah, thank you. I see
But thank you very much.
Thank you. I see a question from Ricardo. I think Shadi, you might be able to.
Yes,
Yeah,
I could.
go ahead.
So I saw it. So for in general, the Ministry of Transportation is working more on infrastructure for cars and road safety. We hear a lot of road safety, and the things the public is demanding, and they are pushing the public to demand more road safety measures related to car infrastructure. That's what's happening. We don't know about any planning. We have the French buses only as a plan, as a project now. But so the ministry has done a study for the port of Beirut. Also, they are doing a study for a road tunnel between Bekaa and Beirut. But we did not hear the ministry saying anything about public transportation, and that's his role at some point to do it. But till now, he did not make it as a priority, and we are pushing for this. At some point, I don't know if we had some project before the crisis. It's called BRT, or bus rapid transit, but it was cut off because of the situation and because they did not implement it on time at some point. So that's what we have for now. But also we must know also there's a power structure for the municipality. They have the power in the law of municipality to operate and make a public transportation system in their territories. So I think we must now push for decentralization of the public transportation through the union of municipality. That could be a solution now, I think. And we are hearing a lot of municipalities, especially Jebel, they are working on electrical buses, I think, with UNDP on this. And we hear a lot of initiative in a lot of cities. They are trying to make some buses or public transportation in the region at some point. And thank you.
Anybody else?
Then would you need to fund those from local municipality taxes? So the municipality, the situation of a municipality at some point, they don't have money. Who are you speak now in Lebanon, they said about the same idea. They don't have income for their paying the salary for their employee at some point. So I think the idea is to invest in the systems that exist now. We have more than 2,000 buses, informal buses. We have more than 14,000 vans. And we have more than 13,000 taxis. So, and now we have more than 1,000 tuk-tuks, I think. So those are the resources what we have it. We could organize it and push it and make it more efficient. I think that's we could now, and also get some grants from international banks at some point for municipality for doing some projects on the municipal level, I think.
I want to add. I want to add to what Shadi just said. It's not. This isn't a pipe dream, and it's not something that is just being. This is actually happening, and it needs to be applied to the transit system. When I was there in December, I was surprised to see, signs, but it says U.S. aid paid for the traffic lights and electrical lights on this street. Is it one street? And then there's another place. UNDP paid for this. Like beautifying a bridge and because of the explosion that happened, that happened a lot more. You find all these random, like this sponsor has brought back this traffic light. So that mentality already happens in Lebanon. And that's on one hand. The other hand, the system itself has self-organized a little bit. And we have, back when I was still there, we had an example there. Shadi might have even more recent examples of like former adversaries who used to always get in their way, each other's way, and kind of steal each other's customers and having basically a conflict all the time, decided this prisoner's dilemma isn't helping anybody. Let us all go to the municipality, and I'm thinking of the Bir Hamoud municipality, and ask them to organize us. Can you create tickets so that we all take turns? And, so basically what a regulator would do, they self-regulated and found a neutral arbiter for a small part of Beirut. It doesn't cover the whole territory because it's just a municipality. And it's a thing that actually existed. They created a kiosk, they call, what you could call it a minor bus stop. And they created a line that didn't exist before. So we have these little models that what's missing is the imagination. It's really a poverty of imagination of policymakers saying, we could implement this municipality by municipality and sort of create the gap that is, fill the gap that is missing from the state, which they already do whenever they want. Whenever they want to find an external grant for something, they find it, but they don't want to apply it to the transit system.
I share on the chat our form volunteering form, and also a campaign that we have launched it with TRU also to support the rider and the operator if someone want to contribute. I don't know, and also we'll try to share the video because someone asked about this. Also because we have some cut off, we'll try to figure out how to put together at some point. I don't know if we have any question or any comment from Katie or someone.
Yeah, I'll just say thank you so much for your presentation, Shadi. I thought that was fascinating, and just it really shows how kind of resilient these systems are. That like Jad said, you're surprised at how efficient the transit actually was, even without any kind of centralizing authority. So yeah, just a pleasure to hear about your all's experience, and hope someday to come and ride the transit system in Beirut.
Of course, I hope we will see you here, and you will go with our trips to discover Lebanon using public transportation. And thank you for your cooperation and your support and solidarity with the two campaigns. And also, I hope we could do something together also to the ridership advocacy at some point. We have Amy, I think she is raising her hand or not.
Sure. I just want to thank you for doing this. I love this idea about crowdsourcing ideas and enthusiasm for public transit across many borders. This was great.
Thank you.
And I would emphasize that this whole politics of learning is really core to advocacy. I'm sure Katie had to teach herself how to talk to these folks, and Shadi and we taught ourselves how to talk to people and how to create advocacy. And that's why I think the very subjectivity of being a rider needs to be lifted up a little bit because you learn how to get around a place. You have these tacit knowledges that you take around with you. That is actually a political act, whether you know it or not. And I think organizations like this that kind of lift consciousness about that, that's probably more important than creating an app or a map.
Also, I send our email if someone if you want to get connected with us. I don't know if I write it. That's good. Yes. So, and you could like our page, and we'll try to send you if you need. I don't know if you could send the presentation, Kathy, for who needs the presentation. We could make it by email also, and I hope we will do also make the video online on our YouTube channel also in the future. And thank you.
I'll send
Yes.
the presentations out by email.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for all who has been today with us. It's Good Friday and Easter also on Sunday. So happy Easter for all. And hope to see you later in other workshops and webinars also. And thank you.